Would you look at that? Elden Ring, a first for the channel, but strangely enough, not a first as far as challenge runs I've done casually. To be honest, the build variety in this game was one of the initial factors that got me interested in doing weapon build challenges in the first place. Bows, fists, claws, you want it? Elden Ring gives a pretty good chance at reaching the credits with it in your hands. But what if we took a handful of weapons we should never pair up together and try a little role play for today's lesson? Howdy, I'm Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox, where we take games and tinker around their insides to see what makes them tick. Today, we'll be trying out a challenge run to push our current target to the limits of what is possible within the game's systems. Can you tell that I copy-paste that whole part? I honestly could just pull the audio out of older videos, couldn't I? In this case, we're going to be taking a look at Elden Ring and asking the simple question, can you beat the entire game while role-playing as Morgott? Well, the first step to answering this question is to start as Morgott does, and try to pass ourselves off as Morgott. Among the starting classes, that means becoming the Wretch, so we can start with nothing but the lack of clothes on our backs, a club in our hands, and a face that only a mother can love. Say hello to Dude McStreamson, who will be playing the part of Hotter Morgott today. So, the key to becoming Morgott really only involves one thing, some weapons. Starting off at Kale here, we can buy ourselves some throwing knives, then find some kukri right down the road. These will be subbing in for the daggers that Morgott throws during the boss fight. Technically, this would really be a dagger I'll be getting myself in a minute, but there isn't a way to throw those, at least not before the DLC comes out. So if you're watching this in the future, which is always the case between me writing and recording these videos and you watching them, and if Shadow of the Erdtree is out and there's some sort of spectral knife throw, then complain that I missed it in the comments, please. It's great for engagement. For now though, my throwing knife equivalent will be every variation of the consumable version of these weapons. That does include bone knives, which I'll be using for the poison variant. Hey, I wonder if these throwing knives could be used to beat the entire... Neat. Turns out, redacted. No, it turns out redacted. Be done. Weird. I can't seem to say it. Guess you'll have to go watch that J.K. Leeds video after this if you want to know the answer to that question. It's a fun one. Alright, but our next weapon to find is a new club. Because the starting one is fine and all, although it doesn't quite look the part. Right? It doesn't have the weathered driftwood look the Morgott game does. That being said, there is one that does have the shape we're looking for. The curved club that drops from the Albinoric Frog Boys and the flooded remains of Raya Lucaria in Liurnia. It takes some time to smash these gray buddies down, but eventually, they drop the weapon. Whew boy, that took a hot minute. But hey, we've got the club. I mean, it's a little small, but at least it's the right shape. Now, let's keep heading through Liurnia and find the next web... What? What is that? There's a curved great club? From a bigger Albinoric? Only like 50 feet away from the little ones I've been farming? Okay, we've got our new weapon for the first half of the damn game. 2 extra hours of farming to get a replacement for something I'd already farmed up. Yay! And that was just one of 4 weapons. Morgott really doesn't want to be emulated. All the same, we press on and head out for the next 3 weapons. 2 are simple enough to find, being carried behind troll carriages in the chests that can only be opened after one of the trolls is killed. So it's a good thing I've got a functional weapon to do this with, right? Right? Yeah, these are a tough sell with an unupgraded weapon with a level 1 character, since both are found in Liurnia of the Lakes. The location balanced around the idea of having already beaten Stormvale Castle. So, while this part isn't impossible, it certainly causes plenty of problems. Especially for this specific carriage, where the Cuck Knight shows up to. That guy is almost impossible with an unupgraded character. Of course, almost is not truly impossible, and eventually, the deed is done, one way or another. The same can also be said for the second carriage. Now, what exactly did all of that work get us? Well, for one, it got us the Carrion Knight Sword, a weapon that I don't have the stats to wield at the moment, since it requires way too much intelligence to be useful for now. Second is the Tree Spear, a heavy spear that requires too much dexterity and faith for me to be able to use. So we've got 3 weapons, and I can only wield one of them, and that's only because I have a talisman on allowing me to use it in 2 hands. Well, if that's the case, then let's go get our 4th weapon, a unique one of the set, as it comes from a quest line. A simple quest, but part of a series of requests from an NPC nonetheless. For that, we need to meet with the great Kenneth Height. He's a complete tool, but his quest is short and sweet, so we can be done with him quickly. All he wants from us is to kill this guy. This dead guy, who's totally dead and totally has never killed me multiple times in a row. Especially not in almost every challenge I've ever tried that has to pass through here at one point or another. And we certainly have several needs drawing us here. After killing the knight, we pick up half of the Dex medallion, and then head back over to Kenny. So impressed by our success, he grants us the Erd Steel Dagger, a pretty looking weapon that is rarely worth the effort of actually picking it up. In this case, it's another weapon that we simply can't use, because the faith requirement is a little too high for an unleveled wretch to utilize. Although, we have been getting some runes on our travels, so we might have some spare levels to spread around and get at least a couple of these weapons online. Although we still need to check off a few quick items on our checklist before we can get to the first major obstacle of the run. This starts with fighting Patches, which will quickly give us access to Morgott's Shackle, as well as the Fan Daggers, a powerful type of throwing knife that I will never use. Then I'll also be picking up the Smithing Stone Bell Bearings 1 and 2 to make sure that some of these weapons can hit plus 12 once I get enough money to supercharge them fast. This works for the club, dagger, and spear, although it doesn't work for the Carrion Knight Sword, or the final weapon we can gather after heading through Caelid for the second half of the Dectus Medallion in order to get up to the Atlas Plateau. We'll find the second bell bearing here too. There's a second treasure to pick up here in Atlas, however, one that really proves exactly how spread out Morgott's skills must be. This would be the Giant Crusher, a massive hammer that will not only knock us into heavy load for holding, but will also require considerable strength to be able to hold in my left hand alone. 60 to be exact, since Morgott never two-hands the weapon as a part of his normal moveset. That's what I'm shooting for, I guess. Well, that's all the weapons I can pick up for now, and I won't be able to find the armor for this run until much later. So let's carry forth towards some real bosses. No. Not Morgott to start the actual any percent. No. First, we need to fight a big dragon stuck on a hill. In order to do this, we're going to take a quick caveat with the rules here. See, in order to kill Grail, the old mother of dragons, we kind of need bleed. I mean, we don't need it, but it would probably take about a day and a half of smacking away at her ankle before we actually got her down fighting her without it. And fighting her the intended way is, well, that ain't happening with this character. Hunter Morgott here is far too weak to take on 5 Dragonbearer dragons with an active debuff. So no, instead we're going to apply blood grease and cheese the giant dragon mommy. A note for the scaly community, cheese is also the way to win the heart of any prominent dragon mommy. It's colored like gold and tastes even better. While we're here, we can also head down and kill the Putrid Avatar. A shockingly easy boss once you realize how to outrun the explosive downstrike with the passive beams and sidestep the rot butt slam. The result is a hefty amount of runes that will get us in the territory of being able to actually wield some of these weapons. And maybe enough vigor to actually survive at least one attack from whatever boss I'm going up against. Which means we're finally up against our first boss in the actual progression of the game, Morgott. Yep, the first step of the trek to the end brings us to fight the very guy we're emulating. Great, right? Because that means we'll get his entire arsenal right now, since we're getting this boss over with early. Right? No, even though that's normally how Elden Ring works, the bait and switch here should have been obvious on our first playthrough to prove that we aren't done with Morgott once we think we're done with Morgott. For now, all we could do is break his face in with his own gnarled club and maybe even slam him into the ground with the remnants of his old shackle. And break his face we do! Pulling out the other weapons periodically shows exactly how useless an unpaired left-handed weapon can be, but I'm doing my best to use them in the coming fights. Most of them, at least. Without the stats to wield the Giant Crusher, I might as well be signing my own death warrant every time I swing it. A warrant that Morgott is more than willing to accept. However, without the Giant Crusher ever being used, we accept Morgott's warrant and move forward into Stormhill. In this case, that means taking the main gate, which isn't exactly the impassable barrier that Gostock implies it to be, since a few well-timed rolls, a jump or two, and hiding behind a lantern is all it takes to get through and prepare us to head up and go Great Rune shopping later. But we need the receipt first, which means fighting Godric. Yeah, the next fight is basically here already. There's not much to talk about with Stormveil when you take the shortcut, since the direct path is so quick. But Godric, what do we do about him? How about we charge R2 with a big-ass club? Think that'll work? Yeah? A few slices with the other weapons are fine and fun, but completely unnecessary. They only act as a distraction. So it's two-hand the club time. Smack Godric around for a while, get in a good riposte, charge forward at the start of the second phase to get under the fire attack, and continue charging R2 until he staggers again. It's Godric. What is there really to say about him? Even if my weapons weren't overpowered, he still wouldn't be the hardest boss to kill. Although killing him, he's dead by the way. Anyway, killing him does allow us to go unlock his Great Rune for a time. It's a helpful enough Great Rune. The best in the entire game, in fact, as it essentially gives the player 40 free levels spread across every stat. I won't have access to this forever though, because of the dying, also because of what we'll be picking up a little later. Now, let's take this newfound power and use it to kill our next major boss, Radahn! Since we've already been to Altus Plateau, we can start the Radahn Festival now and challenge the fight. Now, our setup isn't great, but I'm sure he'll at least be beatable. Maybe we should come back here later. Radahn is putting up more of a fight than I'm really ready to match. At least not with this gnarled club and a handful of shitty left-hand weapons. So let's give his mother a visit. Oh, Renala, I'm home. Would you look at that? The dog is the first to come greet me at the door. Aren't you a cutie? Let's give him some pets. Some really vigorous pets. You want the stick? Wanna fetch the stick? Go get the stick. Good boy. Okay, I'm off to talk to Mama Renala now. You keep being a good boy. So sleepy after all that playing. Anyway, on to the queen herself. The big stick does quick work to her first phase, which is technically her only phase in a way, narratively speaking. But regardless, it's time to kill the illusion of the woman at her prime. And the trick to this is to dodge her magic and hit her a bunch. Yeah, nothing really interesting to say about Renala either. Don't get me wrong, if she catches me with a spell, I'm fucking dead. But this is all muscle memory at this point. Taking her down isn't exactly a thrilling concept anymore. At least, not outside of a no-hit run or something. Well, with Renala dead, we now have access to respecking. Something we won't really be doing until later. But that's neither here nor there. Well, it's there. Way over there. Way down there. What is here is Altus Plateau, and our next boss is standing right there. It's the Draconic Tree Sentinel. Now this guy is something. He's big, he does crazy damage, which essentially means that I need to avoid getting hit entirely at all costs. And he doesn't even stagger, the way so many other bosses do whenever I hit them with my giant stick. No, this is going to be a slightly more involved kill. Slowly chipping away at his health until I can whittle him down entirely. A lot of times I try to let him use the giant smash attack in the second phase, since the moment he reapplies the lightning buff is a great time to punish. Of course, if he runs too far away before applying the buff, that punish can quickly disappear. So it's a slog. But we eventually make it through and gain access to Lindell. Can I say that this is such a weird dungeon for me? Like, as far as the architecture goes, and the winding paths that lead to so many secrets, and even a secret dungeon underneath the larger dungeon, it should be my favorite location in the entire game. However, it's kind of an example of how enemy placement can really make or break a level like this. In the case of Lindell, this tips the scale in kind of the wrong direction for me. Specifically, it's the knight type enemies with the big shields, lightning strikes, and great bows. So many of the enemies in this area are these knights, specifically, that it always feels a little too hard to fully explore. Like, every corner is way too dangerous to peek around, which means that I wind up rushing through without really exploring ever. Something I can't say for my first half-dozen jaunts into Stormvale. That might be something to expand into a completely different type of video, but it's a thought that strikes me every time I take the fastest route through what should be one of the most interesting locations in the game. Anyway, a quick trip through Leyndell later, and we're at Godfrey. While this fight isn't free by any means, he's certainly much easier than his later counterpart. Most of his axe attacks can be dodged easy enough, and as long as you never roll backwards, the long distance stops are avoidable with either rolls or jumps. The real risk here comes from getting too comfortable with the idea that he's the easier version of Godfrey, and underestimating exactly how much damage he does, and how long his combos can stretch on for. I mean, it still is the hardest fight so far, except for Radahn, of course. I still haven't even killed that guy yet. But after Godric and Rennala, this is certainly a real challenge to take down. However, this is nothing compared to what is coming. Hello, Morgott. Meet your death at the hotter version of you. Or I'll meet my death. Again, and again, and again. Okay, this is not going well. Remember that thing about Godfrey being the hardest boss so far? Yeah, multiply that by like 100, and we've got what fighting Morgott at medium load with no armor amounts to. Now, I'm more than willing to admit that this is certainly a skill issue, having a lot to do with the fact that this is the first time I've ever fought the boss without some type of spirit summon backing me up. Either Mimic Tier or the Swordstress twins, and definitely the Melina ally available right outside of the door. So, there are definitely some growing pains happening here, caused in part by fighting without someone or something else to eat up some of Morgott's aggro. So, as I better learn his moveset, let's see what I've learned about this fight and the best strategy I've found for dealing with it. For one, this is a time where my throwing knives come most in handy. Specifically, the poison bone darts that I can craft, as it only takes a handful of them to proc the effect and start draining his health. Second are two scripted moments to get the strongest attacks in. These would be during the Raining Sword attack, which has a long enough windup to either get a good jumping attack off, or a full-on charge R2. Or the start of the second phase, which is a great opportunity to get another poison proc off at a distance. Something else to note here is that depending on RNG, it is also possible to get a charge R2 off right before he can start his second phase in earnest. It's a slim window where the attack won't get reduced by his mid-transition defense boost, and he won't have time to retaliate. If there's no goop explosion right on his position, then take full advantage of this moment. After that, it's a little more than praying that I won't get stomped as I swing at every opportunity I get. Even when it isn't really an opportunity, and the result is little more than trading blows with an enemy that deals more damage and has more health than me. Yeah, not exactly a consistently viable strategy, but one that leads us to victory nonetheless. From here, we're back in Gathering, as we start hunting down materials. First up is trading in this fancy new remembrance that Morgott dropped for an all-new weapon. One that will hurry us through the rest of the game. Heading to kill a mausoleum, we can also get a repeat of the remembrance, and also earn the Regal Omen Bairn, a useless item that I'll use on occasion simply to prove that I picked it up, even if it will never be a better attack than swinging around the real prize, Morgott's Cursed Sword. However, to use this weapon, we need to head back to Rennala for a quick respec, and to do that, we'll need a silver tier. Fortunately, this friendly guy drops one from his box if you smack him up real— holy fucking shit, it's a rune bear! Can't use Morgott's Cursed Sword yet. Kill it with the Carrion Regal Sword, I guess? Yeah, that'll work. So that might not have been the most elegant fight, but hey, it worked. And now we can properly wield our weapon. Sorry there's no footage of me actually respecking. It would appear it was lost in the grind. Anyway, it's time to upgrade our weapons again. This can be accomplished by picking up some somber 7s down in the sewers around these lobster boys. Hate them. Love being able to kill this one from a distance. We're also going to go pick up Morgott's very own Great Rune. Normally, I'd keep Godric's since it's the best in the game, remember? But swapping out for Morgott seemed more in line with the spirit of the run, even if the HP increase is nowhere near as impactful as the overall stat boost for all of my weapons and their various requirements. It's also, fortunately, an easy trip to activate the rune. I've only got to kill one simple boss and... Look away. Look away. Okay. Now you can look again. Kill the Fell Twins, and we're good to unlock Morgott's terrible rune. With that, we can also go finish off Radon. Why? Am I going for all remembrances or something? Nope. Do I wind up needing the extra silver tiers from Nokrom and Nokstella? Nope. Is it because I'm a petty vindictive bitch who can't let having been slighted before pass unpunished? Ding ding ding! That's the one! Well, with Radon dead, our next step is through the mountaintops of the Giants. Kill the double Erdtree avatar for some fucking reason. Kill Okina for some fucking reason. To get access to this church and the final sacred tier. And now we get to fight Fire Giant. Fine. He killed me dozens of times. I've only got a handful recorded to actually show, but believe me, this might have taken about as long as Morgott to execute exactly right. A lot of this was a learning curve as well, like figuring out that I need to stop running before dismounting Torrent for the iframes to avoid getting hit by the snow scoop attack. Aside from that, the first phase really isn't much of a problem, although the second phase is real pain. Between spamming fire spells, a reach on the palm strike that consistently tricks my depth perception, and this roll attack that one-shots me with my low defense, this fight is a living hell. However, with enough perseverance, the giant fucking dies. Thanks in no small part to the bleed effect that comes with Morgott's cursed sword. Maybe there's more room to muck around with a bleed build in the future. For now though, we're off to burn the Erdtree and head to crumbling Fair Missoula. Now, if Lindell was a level I'd consider a would-be masterpiece of open, interconnected design hindered by its overly tanky enemies, Fair Missoula is nearly the opposite. This place is a straight line with some moderately tanky enemies with almost no extra room to explore throughout most of the level. I mean, sure, there are a few secrets here and there, but most of this place feels like it funnels the player forward more than any other Legacy dungeon. And for what? To pit us against the Godskin duo? This fight sucks. It's so easy. I beat it on my second try, without even using sleep pots or summoning burn all. Okay, I'm gonna be straight with you guys here. I have no fucking idea how this worked out so well. Like, I got them separated, they stayed separated, and I was able to basically fight them one-on-one until the fight was over. Again, Morgott's Cursed Sword is doing some heavy lifting with those bleed procs, and the Cursed Bloodslice Ash of War is incredibly powerful. But still, I've never beaten these two this easily in over a year of playing this game. I imagine their AI must have gotten patched into oblivion at some point, and all I can say to that is, thanks From Software, keep up the good work. Fuck these bastards. Fuck these bastards in particular. Speaking of bastards, Beast Clergyman / Malakath. Now, I've mentioned that some bosses gave me a certain amount of trouble up until now, and I've not hyperbolically commented on literal hours, even days of attempts against Fire Giant and Morgott. Please understand what I mean when I say that Malakath was the longest slog in this entire run. Low armor, medium load, 3 extra weapons that do nothing for my combos. This is all a recipe for disaster against Malakath. Let's start with what I learned in the first phase, fighting this boss solo for the first time ever. First, many of his attacks are purpose-built to catch you in ways that every other boss allows you to properly dodge out of the way of. His double swipe, for instance, sees him back away as he slashes, meaning that dodging forward will actually leave the player standing in the middle of the swipe once their iframes run out. Similarly, this lunge will always catch the player if they try to heal at a medium distance. Back all the way up if you want to heal. Let Beast Clergyman throw his giant rocks. They can usually be dodged after chugging anyway. Now, for phase 2. Pray. Honestly, I don't really know how I eventually got through this. Perseverance, skill, unequipping all of the useless weapons to drop into light load and actually be able to dodge Malakath's worst attacks? Oh yeah, probably that one. In fact, it was definitely that one. Without the left-hand weapons weighing me down, I was actually able to better position myself and keep the iframes I needed while dodging in order to properly cut this boss down. Seriously, I went from 2 days of failure to a first attempt kill the very second I removed those weapons. Maybe trying to emulate Morgott's combat style isn't exactly the best way to tackle a game as hard as Elden Ring. Either way, I get past the fight, and we move on to Ashen Capital. It's boss rush time. Starting with Gideon. As has been the case for most NPC fights, Cursed Blood Slice is incredibly useful, thanks to the quick dash forward and the secondary damage when the Slash Remnant explodes through the air. So Gideon isn't really much to worry about. He barely even has time to heal before getting caught in a constant Ash of War combo that puts him firmly on his ass. Guess after all that effort, Gideon didn't know the only thing worth learning in the lands between. Don't fuck with Hotter Morgott. Next up is the real Morgott's father.
It's been a long while, Morgott.
Godfrey. Phase 1 isn't too difficult as long as you can recognize when his axe swing is going to turn into the volcanic stomp. Which, real fast, can we look at this attack? Ideally, the implication here is that he smashes his axe so hard into the ground that in order to pull it out, he has to kick it further into the ground before exploding it out of the resulting eruption. So how is he able to drag his damn axe through the ground while it's supposedly stuck in it? Like, I get that this is little more than enemy attack tracking, but why does an attack, where the implication is that the weapon is stuck in the ground, have this type of tracking? I mean, it isn't too difficult to get out of the way when you recognize it, but still. The Phase 1.5 Stomp transition is also a great time to get some damage in, especially with a jump attack, following the dodge to avoid getting hit by the arena-wide shockwave. A few more hits later, and we're about ready to start the real second phase, against Horalu, Warrior! This might be my favorite fight in the game. The second phase against Horalu specifically. It's amazing. I love his wrestling grabs, I love the super Animu lunges that stop dead in the air before picking back up right before the attack goes out. Also, the effort of actually dodging and countering his fast-paced attacks is a thrilling sequence that keeps the heart pumping from start to finish. It's style over substance, with enough substance to overstuff a black hole. Perfection. No notes. Well, after perfection is finished, we're on to the end. Now, if there was any doubt on whether or not Godfrey Horalu are my favorite boss fight, it is because of Radagon. His combos come out with this deliberate pace that can so easily roll catch players who are dodging rapidly and randomly. There are a few caveats to Radagon's greatness, however, which mostly has to do with his ranged attacks, many of which have the weirdest dodge timing. Also, there's these stomps and teleports that seem to happen without any kind of real telegraph to speak of. Of course, the thing that really keeps Radagon from taking the top spot isn't the boss himself, but the bastard that he's attached to, Elden Beast. Elden Beast sucks, and it is no different between a casual build or as a Morgott. As Morgott, this is even worse, apparently, considering that the only benefit I've seen from the end of this build has been the bleed effect available from Morgott's curved sword. I mean, sure, I can poison Radagon with bone daggers to make that phase go a bit faster, but it's marginal. And I've got access to Kukri and fan daggers for Elden Beast. But the real problem is my own health. Elden Beast's moveset isn't so complicated that it can't be learned. Like, there's some unavoidable damage, looking at you, Elden Stars and Winged Spears. But unless the RNG is terrible, even with my bare fists, I could beat this boss without maybe 5 flasks or less. The problem is that Radagon drains me down to 1 or 2 flasks remaining by the end. So, like with Malekith, I give up on my secondary weapons, and I try to go at it with a single two-handed weapon. The Giant Crusher! That's right, baby, it's finally the Giant Crusher's time to shine. Give me a good head start, and I'll be charge R2ing the boss to death in no time. Hell yeah! Ah, man, that would be so cool. Anyway, I get into light load and Radagon suddenly isn't as much of a bother to me. What do you know? Removing a giant chunk of unnecessary weight makes the game way easier. Like taking off the weighted training gear in Dragon Ball or Naruto. or a third anime. So finally, Elden Beast is down, and it's time to repair the Elden Ring. With what, you might ask? Well, I did the whole Gold Mask questline to find a more perfected version of the Golden Order, since Morgott is wholly dedicated to the Erd Tree and everything it stands for. However, I'd say Hotter Morgott here is his own man, and should embrace the curse that had once been considered a gift. So... well, that, was a way to end the story. Whatever that story was. So what did we learn today? That Morgott's curved sword is a pretty decent weapon? No, not really. That bleed can carry any build? You know, that does make me wonder exactly how powerful a blood build can really be. But hey, that's a story for another time. See you soon.